The epistle reading is James chapter 3, beginning with the 13th verse. Who is wise and understanding among you? By his good life, let him show his works in the meekness of wisdom. But if you have bitter jealousy and selfish ambition in your hearts, there will be disorder and every vile practice. But the wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, open to reason, full of mercy and good fruits. And the harvest of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. What causes wars and what causes fightings among you? Is it not your passions that are at war in your members? You desire and do not have, so you kill. And you covet and cannot obtain, so you fight and wage war. You do not have because you do not ask. You ask and do not receive because you ask wrongly, to spend it on your passions. Do you not know that friendship with this world is enmity with God? God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Submit yourself, therefore, to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. Cleanse your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you men of double mind. This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God.
Jamie, thank you for that reading. I continue to be struck by this James is the brother of Jesus. And if I wanted to try to convince somebody that Jesus really is as great as we say, I'd say look no further than his brother James. I mean, James, of all people, would be in a position to say, you know, he whacked me with a board in my dad's carpentry shop. He stole my dessert. He lied before breakfast. I mean, whatever. He wasn't really raised from the dead. Are you kidding me? James could have done that. But instead, this is interesting, James became a Christian, a follower of his brother, and it wasn't convenient for him. As a matter of fact, it cost him his life. The Roman authorities came to him and said, are you a follower of Jesus? Do you believe in him? His brother, he could have backed out, but he said, I do, and they executed him. It's amazing. James, to me, in this passage sounds a little weary, I think. Early Christianity had to be hard. He's leading the church there in Jerusalem. It had to be hard. They didn't have any buildings to come to. They didn't have any budgets, although as soon as I say that, I harbor a little envy for James. Have a church budget to worry about. I'll not miss that when I'm retired. Didn't have a budget. Christians in those days were often laughed at. They lost out on business deals because of their commitments. It was hard. They didn't have books. They didn't have seminaries. They didn't have devotionals. All they had were mere mortals. And when you have mere mortals, you wind up with what James describes. They have strife and bitterness. Strife and bitterness. And James has a threefold diagnosis for why they have strife and bitterness and sort of what to do about it. One, it's a lack of wisdom. Two, this is interesting, they pray, but they ask wrongly. And then number three, friendship with the world. We could take those in reverse order. We can start with friendship with the world, which sounds like a good thing, and we should befriend the world. God created the world with just such extravagant beauty, and clearly God's intention was for our jaws to drop in awe and wonder. And it's not just the photogenic stuff, it's the unphotogenic stuff. It's the unnecessary stuff. God could have created the world and would have run just fine without hummingbirds. But there was one outside my window yesterday, and it kind of caught me up out of what I don't know what I was busy doing. I was like, look at that. So befriending the world, the suffering of the world, people in the world who are having a tough go, we're to befriend the world. So I think when James says strife and bitterness comes from befriending the world, I think he's thinking of things like, I don't know, I read the study years ago about laboratory rats You take an individual laboratory rat and you give them some alcohol, well, not rubbing alcohol, but the kind that you drink. And a rat will take a sip of alcohol, but then they'll leave it alone. But if you put 10 rats in the same cage and offer alcohol, they all get drunk. Like, what is that? What is that? When I started, I probably shouldn't even get into details of what happened to me my freshman year in college. Same thing, befriending the world wasn't pretty, shall we say. You watch ads on TV, and there's your new best friend who's so good looking and just so happy and glamorous. And if you just buy this, if you just have this, if you just go there, you can be like this. And oh, that just seems so great. Although it's not a true friend, because then you feel kind of small and inadequate and insufficient. The chatter that you hear, you know how this goes? You're like at the water cooler at work, or you finish tennis and other people are hanging around before they go home. There's a chatter that goes on. And it just feeds the dark side, right? They don't talk about noble things. They talk about, kind of judging others and, political ideology and, fawning over, just what's so cool, the same stuff you saw in the ads on TV. Just not good for us. In my Exodus class the other day, we talked about the 10 Commandments, and I said that Martin Luther taught us that there's a promise hidden in each one of the commandments. It's not, you better do this, but there's a promise, a grace-filled promise in each one. And the last of the commandments is probably the least adhered to in our society, which is thou shalt not covet. I mean, coveting is the engine of capitalism. The ads don't come on and say, be very content, you don't need anything else. No, they say you should be discontented. You need new things. You need better things. The commandment says you shall not covet. God would say, you don't have to. I want to liberate you from coveting. You're already enough. You have enough. You can be content. You're already okay. Friendship with the world, asking wrongly. Can you pray and ask wrongly? It seems like it's a good thing, like just to pray. I prayed. Could I be asking wrongly? But the disciples come to Jesus to say, Lord, teach us to pray. It kind of implies they don't just know how to pray. How do I pray better? How do I pray more in sync with the mind and the heart of God? Lord, help me climb this career ladder. Lord, I told you before about, this is just haunting to me. A friend of mine studied the journals of slave owners, women on the plantation. And in their journals, they talk a lot about what they're praying for. And they pray for things like, Lord, please show me how harshly to discipline my slave. Lord, please show me whether to buy 2 additional slaves. Lord, all this prayer, and they're praying wrongly, right? They never pray, Lord, should I release my slave? They're praying wrongly, not in sync with the mind and heart of God. Praying rightly might have something to do with, I think about the little boy Samuel in the Old Testament. After talking with Eli, his prayer is, speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. And to listen, it's going to take some time. It's not just, Lord, do this, do this, do this on my list, but speak, Lord, I'm listening. It takes some time. It's a funny thing the other day, I got a text from somebody. I send out these daily texts that some of you probably get, and some of you thank me for them. I enjoy doing it. It's fun. But I get interesting responses to my text, by the way. People that kind of lose which chain they're on, so they're trying to text somebody else, maybe named James, I don't know, but it comes to me, and it's like, can you pick up milk on the way home? Like, sure. Where do you live? It's great. But I got one the other day. This is so interesting. So I got a text back. He says, I love your text. And then he said this, you provide me with a life of prayer. And at first I thought, oh, good. And then I thought, wait. So I texted him back and I said, are my text messages the sum total of your life of prayer? And he said, yeah. This kind of worried me, because if you don't get my text, they're very short. They take about 10 seconds to read. And at that time, it's interesting, that very day, I'd been reading This is a new book out about prayer and contemplation by this new faculty member at Duke that I've not even met yet. It's a great book. I'll tell you more about it later. But in it, he talks about praying and aspects of it, and he keeps referring to 20 minutes. Like when you're 20 minutes of prayer. I say that to you, and you probably shiver like, oh my God, 20 minutes. How can I possibly do 20? Think how many 20-minute chunks you have in a day. And what he says is, if you plan to spend eternity with God, to spend 20 minutes now, I don't know, that might be a rational thing. He talks about that 20 minutes. So I love this. Let me share some of this with you. He says that what you can do is at the beginning, you read a small passage from Scripture, or you look at an image, maybe a cross or a face of Jesus, something. He said, and then you just chew on it for a while. You let it marinate. And he says, if you do this, it changes the entire character of the day, the way that sprinkling salt on a dish changes the flavor of the entire dish. Isn't that interesting? But then later he says this other thing that, I read this yesterday. He talks about the 20 minutes. He says, the whole span of time, for that whole span of time, you have been with the sole person in the cosmos who is master of death and life. And not just in general, but in yours in particular. Throughout the day, listen to this, you sense just beneath the surface of consciousness a beneficial watchfulness, a guarding of the heart and mind. Like I'd love that through my day, a beneficial watchfulness, a guarding of the heart and mind. Some time that I spent in prayer, lingering through the day, changing the character of the day. The other thing that James says causes bitterness and strife, it's a lack of wisdom. Wisdom. Who is wise among you is the question that Jamie read to us from the letter of James. That's hard to answer, right? We all know smart people. You know smart people. You know successful people. You know clever people. But who are the wise people? They're hard to find. Who has wisdom? What does it even look like? Wisdom takes, it takes time. It takes perspective. It takes humility, it takes curiosity, wisdom. James says that wisdom is peaceable and gentle. So if you see somebody railing about politics, that is not wisdom, because it is not peaceable and gentle. Wisdom is peaceable and gentle. And then he adds this, the wise are open to reason. We think this way sometimes, like we wish those other guys were open to reason. They sure aren't, right? But what James is saying is that wisdom is open to reason. And what's interesting about the Greek underlying that is the word that's translated open to reason is metanoia, and metanoia means a change of mind. Wisdom doesn't have all the answers figured out, the trapdoor slammed shut long ago. No, wisdom is able to change its mind. Wisdom, I've told you this a couple weeks ago when the debates were coming. I would have loved it in the presidential debate. See if you imagine this. Is somebody says something, and then the other candidate says, wow, you made a good point there. I never thought of that. I think I agree with you now. Like, I'd vote for that person. The first one to do that, you got James Howell's vote. That would just be great. Winston Churchill famously said, I'd rather be right than consistent. But we live in a world where you just can't change your mind. If a politician changes their mind, it's the kiss of death. If you got a brain and you're living in the world, you're going to change your mind all the time because there's so much that you do not know. There's so much that you have not yet figured out. I think of Mary Oliver's great poem where she says, another morning, and I wake with a thirst for the goodness I do not yet have. There's so much I do not know. There's so much I do not understand. There's so much I learned. There's so many things that I thought I had it all figured out, and oh man, I was so off. I didn't mean to be. I was doing my best. Thank God I'm still learning and growing. There's a goodness I do not yet have. I tried to finish off this sermon, I try to think of people that I have talked to who have changed their mind, and that was shockingly hard. Like I had to really dig in my mind. Who is somebody who's told me that they changed their mind? But I came up with a couple, and I'll share them with you. One was a guy, he didn't use the language, I changed my mind, but it's really what he narrated to me. He said, church has been great for me. We love to hear this. I said, you know about the budget thing? Anyway. And I said, how's church been great for you? This was amazing to me. He said, for the longest time, I thought I was here on earth to work and to produce and to go fast and to do more. And so even when I was off, my motto was work hard, play hard. So I was just doing more and more. He said, I think I felt some hollowness inside, but I thought if I just do more of this, produce more, get more, then I'll fill that place inside. He said, it just wasn't working. He said, so now, everything's different. I said, what is different now? He said, I am at home. I said, you're in your house? He said, well, I am in my house more. He said, but I am at home. He said, I've learned how to be at home with God, and I've learned how to be at home with myself. I said, church has been really good for me. I love that. Second person, change of mind, is a woman that I talked to way back. This is interesting. Nobody ever says the following. She said, I have changed my political affiliation. My jaw fell to the floor. Like, nobody does that because we have our tribes, right? And we're just with them no matter how it goes. And I said, what on earth led you to change your political affiliation? She said, I've been in this Bible study for a long time, and we read the Bible and we think about Jesus, and I've tried to take that really seriously. And I just found I was at the wrong place. She said that my new party is far from perfect. They do 100 dumb things, but it's more to me in sync with Jesus. And this is so cool. She said the beauty of that is I have no judgment or hard feelings toward people on the other side because I've been there. That was me for most of my life. So I know how to love and listen to those guys. I love that. She changed her mind. Third example, not somebody I spoke to this week, but that I've known in the course of my lifetime. There was an amazing news story this week. There was a bombshell in the theological world that made the national news. This happens about once every 47 years, I believe. And the bombshell in the theological world was there was a guy named Richard Hayes. He a brilliant scholar, world-renowned, taught New Testament at Duke forever, became the dean of Duke Divinity. So he spoke at our church 17 or 18 years ago. Some of you may remember. And just a lovely man. And in 1996, that's 28 years ago, he wrote a book that became a bestseller. This just doesn't happen in theology. And his book is called The Moral Vision of the New Testament. It became kind of the definitive best-selling textbook on New Testament ethics and Christian ethics. Great, it's a great book, thick. I snapped it up right then, read it all, and it was a great book. And it's just been a bestseller ever since. And one chapter of it, though, really caught the lion's share of attention then and ever since then. And that of the many issues that he talked about, what drew people's attention is that he had a discussion in there of the New Testament and homosexuality. And in it, he penned sort of the definitive case for what you would call people who call themselves compassionate conservatives, right? They would say, homosexuality in the Bible is wrong. It is a sin. But we love people, we welcome people, we're all that. And since then, he's been quoted thousands of times. He's been kind of the great hero of so many people on that issue. So this week, he published a book, co-authored with his son Christopher, who's also a Bible scholar. And in the book, he begins the book by saying, 28 years ago, I was wrong. And he said, I've learned over that time how much my words have hurt so many people who are like trying to be with God. They've read these words, and so many other people have quoted them, and he said, I've wounded so many people, and I have contrition for that. I want to say to them, I am sorry. And he said, and I've changed my mind, not based on just, well, I feel sorry for people. I've changed my mind because, I love this. He said, I've become a better reader of the Bible over time. He said, back then, what I did, he said, largely I was kind of propping up my intellectual standing, and I got a lot of glory for that. He said, but now I read the Bible more wisely. You don't just pick out a verse here or there, but you read the context of all of Scripture, as we do on almost all issues. So he said, I've changed my mind. Now, when I tell you this, I'm not suggesting that you should agree with Richard's change of mind. What I want you to ponder is whatever you think you know about God, here's Richard, is one of the smartest guys that I've ever known, one of the greatest New Testament scholars and theologians in the world. He's got some years on me. And somebody like that can say, I was wrong. I thought I had it all figured out, but now I know better, and I'm sorry that I was wrong. I'm moved by that. I want to be like that. I want you to be like that. To me, it's all about what kind of church are we going to be. There are churches where they've got the right answers to everything and everybody toes the line and they all agree with each other, and I do not wish to be the pastor of such a church. I love being the pastor of a church like ours. It's a big tent church. It's harder to do by far. This is a church where people disagree, which makes sense because we've got nothing but mere mortals and we don't all have it figured out. It's a place of mercy. I dream of it being a place where people would, like the first guy, learn how to be at home. I'd also love it if it was a place where our political affiliations, we change our mind and we just go back and forth across the aisle and we understand each other, we know how to love each other and listen to each other. On whatever the issues of the day are, we keep open. Our prayer always is, Lord, I awake another morning with a thirst for the goodness I do not yet have. I awake another morning with a thirst for the knowledge of your mind and heart, O God, that I do not yet have. I awake another morning, O Lord, more than happy to change my mind, to say I was wrong, to say I've learned more about you, O God, and your people, O God. I dream of this being a place of great mercy, so much love, so much faith, so much wisdom. We're not very wise just yet, but it's where we want to go together. So we have hope. We have hope because of the love of God. Thanks be to God for James, the brother of our Lord.